How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. How nice is it to not have to discuss Rafael Ortega starting in left field this offseason? Pretty damn nice. No Aaron Hicks, no Cabrera, no Ortega. We're here. We got Verdugo. We got Juan Soto. Our outfield is set and cemented in stone. And thank God, because the outfield last year, we did not know what was going on. We were very concerned, rightfully so. And we ended up rolling with Hicks, who was awful, goes to the Orioles, and then it all fell apart from there. Judge misses time. Bader misses time. We end up moving Bader, releasing Hicks. It's like, just game of musical chairs in the outfield last year. This year we got it locked down with very durable talent, knock on wood. So a couple interesting storylines we wanted to discuss. The pitching, obviously some of these younger options. I wrote about Anthony Volpe this morning, where he's kind of going with his game and where he needs to improve. So we'll start off discussing some of these younger players. We've discussed Spencer Jones. We've discussed Jason Dominguez's rehab in yesterday's episode. But I want to start with Ben Rice, because Ben Rice has a chance here to really cement himself as that prospect who could take over at first base long-term for Anthony Rizzo. I don't see why the Yankees would keep him at catcher right now. We have Augustin Ramirez, we have Carlos Narvaez, we have Austin Wells, Jose Trevino, Ben Rortvedt. We have no reason for Ben Rice to stay at catcher, aside from maybe they think he can become a long-term option, which I don't think they do at the current juncture. What I do think is that he could be a long-term first baseman, slugging guy, lefty. He could be a perfect player for this team offensively. What are your thoughts on Ben Rice going into spring training? What are you expecting to see from him? What do you want to see from him to make sure that he kind of puts his name on the radar as a potential supplement for Anthony Rizzo when his contract expires, or the Yankees have an option for the 2025 season at $20 million?
Yeah, so, as you mentioned with Ben Rice, there is a lot of excitement around him. He was a non-roster invite, one of 5 really exciting non-roster invites we talked about in the BB Bombers podcast, so make sure you guys check that out. But when it pertains to Ben Rice, he is such an interesting prospect because he's kind of like, in a sense, he goes against all conventional scouting, and he is an older guy who was drafted, out of an Ivy League school. You rarely see Ivy League guys get drafted in the first place, and he was drafted in a year where he didn't play college baseball because the Ivy League schools canceled their baseball season, and I think they canceled all the athletic seasons, if I'm not mistaken. So, Alex is going to be a really exciting player to watch. We could see him this year. He is a really quality left-handed bat. The difference between a guy like him and Spencer Jones is, obviously, Spencer Jones is a better prospect. There's no question about that. But the guy who might have more immediate impact in 2024 is Ben Rice. That's the guy you look at and say, look at all his projections, right? They all project him to be an above average hitter. His bat path, his contact rates, his advanced feel for the strike zone. He's kind of the prospect he is now is the prospect and the hitter he'll be for the rest of his career, right? In terms of his skill sets, his weaknesses, his strengths, all that stuff. Now, I have a little bit of concerns about how he handles left-handed pitching. Perhaps that's something we see a little bit more in spring training, gets more looks against lefties, gets to play against them, gets to, get an extended look and get comfortable in those matchups, but he'll get a time to work at first base, work alongside the major league infielders, Volpe, Gleyber, LeMahieu, Peraza, Cabrera, guys of that nature. Maybe he gets some reps behind the plate. There's nothing that's publicly come out to suggest that, while we believe, and let's be real here, he will end up a first baseman. He will not become a full-time catcher at the major league level. No reports have come out to say that he's not going to catch this year, right? I imagine they're going to give him some reps at catcher. I don't know who he'll work with. I don't know if it'll be a guy like a Garrett Cole or even a guy like a Will Ward or a Clark Schmidt. But we'll get to see him play alongside major league players, and that's a huge storyline. That is something that we're going to watch plenty and keep tabs on. And who knows? A big spring training, you start out on AAA, and suddenly we're having conversations of, it's April, it's May, somebody goes down, maybe that person's staying, it opens up the DH spot, and you're like, why not Ben Rice, right? Why not Ben Rice? And, that's a situation you want to put yourself in if you're a prospect. Just put yourself on the map. Make yourself indispensable. Make the team have to make a tough decision. Make the team think to themselves, we can't keep this guy down there. We need to win games, right? What made Jason Dominguez, what made the Yankees, have to call him up, even though I don't think they were planning on doing so this year, was they were like, how can we keep him in AAA? The goal is to win games, right? Isn't that the goal of what we're trying to do? The goal is to have the best 26 players. I believe even Aaron Judge said it. I don't care how old you are. The goal is to have the best players on the field at all times. I think they were like, we can't just ignore that Jason Dominguez is playing so well. Ben Rice, put yourself in that spot in spring training and in AAA, my man, because I promise you, his swing is perfect for the Bronx. It's perfect for this lineup.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to see what Ben Rice can contribute to this team. I really, I don't want to go too deep into this, but I was just thinking about Gleyber Torres, and I was thinking about how, he seems to be really good buddies with Juan Soto. They're at the Caribbean Series, obviously one on Dominican Republic, one on Venezuela. And Gleyber Torres, has kind of been like one of those key, like, good locker room vibe players for the last couple years. Last year, aside from Judge, and Cashman said it himself, was our best hitter. He was our best offensive player. Now, his contract is expected to be in the $18.5 million range. I think Spotrac has him at like 7 years, like with $18.5 million per season. This is kind of the situation the Yankees face where he's been in trade talks for years now. Do you extend him? They're not going to make any moves on him until after this upcoming season. But do you expect to see the Yankees give a couple of these youngsters chances at second base? Oswald Peraza, are we going to see him play a lot more second base in spring training? Could that be a kind of like something to consider as a narrative to build? Do they think about Peraza as a potential supplement, for a cheap supplement for Gleyber in the future? Caleb Durbin, a guy who had a 4.6% strikeout rate in Double-A last year. Ridiculous numbers. He is 5'6", nothing, but man, the guy can hit, and he's a player with some really good upside. 24 years old, I believe, so he's ready to make that jump. Maybe 23. He's ready to make that jump to the bigs really soon, based on his age and his development. He'll probably be a Triple-A player this year. Looking at Gleyber Torres, Ryan, how are you feeling right now in terms of probability he will be extended? Or the Yankees are going to start getting some of those younger pieces worked in at second base during spring training that could be kind of a projection into the future on what that position looks like?
Yeah, so the big thing for me here is that Gleyber Torres, the Yankees haven't had conversations with him about an extension. I think that's important to point out here. I don't think the Yankees want to extend Gleyber Torres. I think they're going to wait. They'll see. I'm not sure he's going to come back after next year. And I'm not this year. And I'm not saying that to say I don't want him back. I'm not saying that to say I don't think he's a really good second baseman. I'm saying that to say that's just what I think the tea leaves are saying, right? And as you alluded to, their crop of infield talent coming up. They have Vivas, they have Durbin. They have a couple of guys that they have taken a liking to. We'll see based on what this year goes on and how this year turns out, whether the Yankees will bring back Torres or not. Obviously, if he has a great season and, he has a great interest in coming back, you have to at least try, right? And if your minor league guys don't take that step forward, you're like, okay, well, we have to try. I don't think Peraza is like a replacement option for Torres. Maybe he emerges this year. Maybe he has a big year. Maybe he kind of clicks, but I just don't view him as the replacement for Gleyber Torres. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Again, we'll wait and see. But the infield is certainly going to be an interesting situation because the question is, who is the guy after Gleyber? Who is going to emerge as like, this is the guy that we're going to throw in our infield down the road? And, we're talking about Gleyber, but all three of the guys we talked about, Durbin, Vivas, and Peraza, can play third base. What is going to happen if DJ LeMahieu gets hurt? What is going to happen if he struggles? What's going to happen if he's not good enough or he's just average? Can one of these prospects emerge and put themselves in a situation where it's like, hey, you can't ignore us. We need to be playing third base for this team. Again, that's what Dominguez did last year in center field. That's what Wells did to an extent at catcher. That's what Pereira did to an extent in left field. I know he didn't play well at the major league level, but I'm just referring to their minor league performance. We'll have to wait and see. But spring training will certainly give an opportunity for three guys who are knocking on the door of the major leagues. I anticipate all three of these guys to be in AAA. We'll see which one of them emerges as the most impressive one, and we'll see if that carries into spring training. I think Jason Dominguez, what he did in spring training, opened a lot of eyes because once he figured it out in AA, which, he went on a tear, it meant that I think the Yankees were like, hey, we know with this guy, right? Wells didn't get a chance to play in spring training. I think that kind of hurt his stock a little bit in terms of his ability to get to the major leagues faster. I think that's why they waited a little bit. But again, an impressive spring training, a good spring training, good rapport with some of the other major league guys, play some strong defense, show a little bit with the bat. All three of those guys are very athletic and can run the bases well. They can all provide something for this team. And who knows? You get an extended look at third base and you play well. Suddenly you feel good about sliding them to second base and making them a second baseman in the future. And if you're going to pay Soto, if you're going to have, these arbitration years coming up in the next few years with some of your younger players, you're going to need to have cost-controlled talent. So definitely excited to see how these guys end up panning out.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You're going to have cost control talent. Now, let's take a look at the pitching narrative for a second. How many innings do you think that we're going to see from guys like Carlos Rodon, Nestor Cortez coming off their obviously injury-riddled 2023 seasons? I think that it'll be interesting to see how much weight guys like Stanton, obviously not a pitcher, but I want to see how much weight he's dropped and how much weight Carlos Rodon dropped. And, are these guys ready to make an appearance during spring training, showcase that they're back to full strength and full health and going through their pitching programs at a fine level? So, are you expecting the Yankees to be more kind of cautious with how they utilize these guys during spring training? Or do you think they're throwing them right back into the mix and saying, you've had months to get this thing right, you've had months to work on your craft, get back to full strength, you guys are going through a normal spring training? Or do you think that they should be a bit more cautious with how they utilize them?
I think caution in spring training will always be a thing. You're easing these guys back in, but I don't think they're going to do anything absurd or abnormal with their workloads. I don't think we're going to see like Rodon wait until the last week of March to get ready if he's healthy. Of course, if something happens and he gets hurt, obviously they're not going to say, you've got to pitch the first game of spring training. You need to get your spring training reps in. But as you alluded to, like, the Yankees have a lot of injury-prone players. Whenever anybody comes out of a game, even if it's a planned substitution, whenever somebody, looks a little funky, moves their shoulder, moves their elbow, checks their footing, starts, tugging at a ligament or a limb, we're going to feel uneasy. We're going to hold our breaths, right? It's one of those teams. It's one of those stressful, that's the stressful part of baseball that I don't miss, which is the Giancarlo Stanton has been removed from the game, and you have no idea why. And you're sitting there on Twitter, refreshing, no idea what happened. But they're going to have to, I think they obviously, like spring training, again, you always take it easy. But I don't think they're going to baby these guys because, and I'm not saying that these athletes are soft or whatever. Again, I'm not an athlete. I can't possibly call somebody who plays 162 games of baseball every year soft. But I don't think they're going to say, yeah, we aren't going to put you on a normal spring training schedule. You need to get these guys built up for the season. If they get hurt, they get hurt, but they might get hurt not being built up, right? Like if they don't get enough reps in spring training, they might not be ready for the regular season, right? Like they might not be ready to throw 5 innings or whatever. Now, when opening day comes around and the first 2 weeks of the season roll around, don't be surprised if some guys skip starts. Don't be surprised if like Carlos Rodon is not allowed to get past the 5th inning for the first few outings. Like I don't think the Yankees are going to say Carlos Rodon is pitching great for the first 5 innings. Let's push it. 6th, 7th, 8th, go give me a complete game. They're not going to do that. They are absolutely not going to do that. They're not going to, I'm pretty sure we've seen the Yankees pull guys during no-hitters. If you remember Severino a couple years back against Texas, no-hitting Texas, and in the 7th inning, Aaron Boone pulls them, right? They're going to go based off their work schedules. I just believe that spring training will look normal. Regular seasons where we'll see a little bit of, I'm not going to say foolishness or like weird stuff, just more caution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll definitely see a little bit more caution. I think that's the right move anyway, because you don't want to have the same situation that unfolded last year, and then all of a sudden you're down multiple pitchers going into the regular season. They need to be careful, especially with Rodon, who, expects to be that number 2 guy alongside Garrett Cole. We can't afford to lose him right now. So, when it comes to anybody else that you have in mind, what are you thinking in terms of exactly who could maybe have a surprise performance? Like we saw Anthony Volpe win that shortstop job last year. Is there anyone that you're kind of targeting saying maybe there's someone that could like unseat a player? Maybe there's someone that could, like what happens if Oswald Peraza looks tremendous offensively and puts together a really good couple of weeks? Are you going to like maybe float the idea that he could end up starting at third base and LeMahieu could kind of fall back into that regular utility role?
Yeah, I have a hard time believing LeMahieu's going to lose his job in the spring. Barring an injury. Now, I have to say that every time because, guys get hurt. That just happens, right? Not even LeMahieu. What if Rizzo gets hurt, right? LeMahieu slides over the first, Peraza's playing third. Or, I'm not saying Ben Rice is going to win a job out of spring if Rizzo gets hurt, but that's certainly a conversation, right? Like, it's a conversation. You have to have the conversation. You don't know. It's really interesting. Like, they kind of flipped the script when they brought up Volpe last year. I was stunned that Volpe won the starting shortstop job. Maybe not at the time, but if you told me at the beginning of spring training, yeah, Anthony Volpe's winning that job, it would have been like, get the hell out of here. The Yankees are not going to do something that aggressive with a prospect. And they did, right? Like, is Ben Rice really that far behind Volpe at the time when we're adjusting for where they were at the end of the season? I don't think so, and projection systems certainly don't think so. They think Ben Rice is a little bit ahead of schedule offensively. He was an older guy, things of that nature, played in college. But yeah, I have a hard time seeing Peraza beating out LeMahieu in spring training. Now, if that happens, I'm not saying that Yankee fans should root for that outcome, but what I am saying, and kind of stick with me here, Peraza would have to have a great spring training, like an unbelievable spring. Shows off some hits the ball out harder, makes unbelievable swing decisions, just flat out impresses to win a job out of spring training camp. So in a sense, not that you're rooting for it, but if that outcome happened, it's probably a good thing for the Yankees because it means he played really well. And another thing is, if he doesn't win the job at starting third base, which, again, I just don't think he will, he's probably going to Scranton. Like, he has an option. Why would you, like, let him just rot on the bench? He's probably better off playing every day. I think there's a reason they're in on guys like Tony Kemp and Gio Urshela. I don't think they end up with Urshela. Ken Rosenthal talked about this yesterday. The Marlins are pretty interested in him, and I would assume the Marlins would be a better going spot for Urshela. Like, maybe, I know they're offering more money too. That's what Brian Hoke reported. And if you're Urshela, like, why would you take a bench role at the Yankees when you could play every day in Miami? Like, for your stock, you're taking a 1-year deal. It's probably just better to get the everyday reps. Maybe a guy like Tony Kemp is the guy they bring in. We saw them bring in Marwin Gonzalez on a non-roster invite. I'm sure one of these non-roster invites will play their way into a conversation. Willie Calhoun played his way into a conversation. Jake Bowers didn't really play his way into a conversation until AAA, but he was here by like May, right? And by May, we were like, hey, why is this guy not called up? Like, I hope that it doesn't end up being a situation like that where we're talking about like career minor leaguers and begging the Yankees to call them up. But what I am saying is just I don't anticipate Peraza being on the major league team unless he is so good that they have to start him. And that's such a low probability because like how much stock are you going to take in spring training data? Like if he like I don't even know if I would take that stock, right? Like Alex, if he puts up big numbers, are you going to be like, yep, spring training, big numbers. That's how you know he's a good player. Sometimes it's fluky, so we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, there's going to be a lot of interesting things to kind of watch during spring training. We got you guys covered as things start to ramp up. We've been seeing some videos, Anthony Volpe's footwork at shortstop, and we saw Stanton looks a lot thinner. So there are some things developing, and we're getting excited. We're getting there, my friends. Baseball season is just around the bend. We have a lot planned for you, and we're excited to give you all of the great content that we have been over the last couple months, plus a lot more. So if you guys have any of your own interesting narratives that you're going to be following during spring training, make sure to drop them in the comment section below. Any ideas that you have for us, you want us to discuss, happy to address in the coming episodes. We're kind of in the dead of the off season now. We're right before spring training. There's not much to talk about, but we're still grinding through and finding fun things to discuss with you guys. So always happy to get you guys involved as always. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.